Welcome, Freedom Junkies, to Freedom Junkie Radio. I'm Betsy Dewey, your host, and today I have Brandon Wallace with me. He has an Austin-based company called Plan Systems, where it's technology that's going to be groundbreaking as soon as it's made available to all of us. Basically an application that I'm going to let Brandon talk about it because I won't describe it right. So Brandon, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much, Betsy. It's great to be here.
Well, I'm super excited for you to be here. This is going to be a different kind of show because we're going to have a lot of visuals because he's going to be using a screen. So if you're listening to this podcast today, go ahead and listen. But if you're very interested in what we're talking about, you may want to go back and watch it afterwards. So Brandon, tell us what Plan Systems is about.
Yeah, so this idea is that the idea that really is behind Plan Systems and the motivation behind the technology that we're creating and developing is that people need the tools to securely connect with each other and to engage in meaningful projects like this podcast right here, for instance. So Plan Systems is developing tools for real-time and immersive collaboration and project management for groups and communities so they can make better decisions together, and we're using sort of this new era of internet technologies. Some people call it Web 3.0. It really is just a sort of evolution of the internet technologies that we're all really familiar with, but just with a new twist that the systems, the infrastructure that underlies those software applications and interfaces that we all love using is based on a framework that brings to paramount concern things like data privacy and data ownership and infrastructure resiliency and having a piece of software that is hardware agnostic. It doesn't have terms and stipulations about what piece of hardware you put it on or what kind of organization that you're working on.
Okay, so what I gather is that it doesn't take the place of the internet, but in a way it's going to take the place of a lot of what you use the internet for.
It will essentially transform the internet from a 2D web layout interface to a more collaborative and immersive space. So right now, the extent of collaboration on the internet really is things like Google Documents or Slack or these messaging apps that people have been adopting and using for quite a few decades now.
Okay, so this would maybe kind of take the place of a social media in a way, because you can communicate through it.
In a way, yeah, right, exactly. But the important consideration is that this new community operating system is designed to be community-centric. So you're not coming to Plan Systems to update your security permissions or your governance structure. You're defining those things at your community level and then inviting people into this encrypted enclave that can then allow people to connect with each other and have that outer security layer that can really bring a community together. Let's say a neighborhood struggling through a winter storm, for example, might adopt a peer-to-peer system with an interface that allows you to collaboratively map your environment, maybe sharing resources, sharing perspectives about your situation.
I can't wait till you get to show us some of this stuff and show us these maps, because it's amazing. It's like you're in a video game when I saw you give the presentation that I saw. So you're saying that the surveillance aspect, the privacy aspect is much better. It's like leaps and bounds, like way over the moon better than internet.
Well, yeah, the internet really is inherently kind of an insecure place. When it was first invented, the people that were looking at implementing it had security mechanisms, hardware encryption systems that they used on top of those protocols. So really the privacy of the internet was always sort of like an afterthought. It was built in a time frame where there weren't sophisticated surveillance tools designed to pick apart these systems.
That came later. Okay, so I have two questions before we get started. One is your background a little bit, and then because I think that's fascinating, where you come from military and your training there, and what you did with the U.S. military. Then the other thing is where you're going. So where you came from and where you're going before we get started, because so first give us a little bit of your background.
I was a California transplant into Houston, Texas, and with my single mother, I decided to join the military out of high school. And so my decision was to become an intelligence operations analyst. And I didn't know what that meant at the time. It very much sounded like I would be able to gain a better exposure to the systems and the way that the world works. And so I was at that age. It was in the year 2000 and when I joined. And so it was about a year before 9/11. And I referenced 9/11 just because that was a huge military force shaping event, and it had a lot of implications on the intelligence community and the way that analysis and decision making occurs in those fields. And so I joined and became an intelligence analyst, and my first duty assignment was in San Antonio, where I learned about nodal analysis and basically understanding networks better and their centers of gravity. And from there, I moved on and worked at a little unit called the 6th 13th Contingency Response Group. And that was designed to be a quick reaction kind of entity for the Pacific. And so Guam is this very tiny island in the middle of the Pacific, very strategically positioned.
U.S. territory.
It is a U.S. territory, and it's a beautiful little island. It has a Navy base on the south and an Air Force base on the north part of the island. So I ended up at this tiny unit. It didn't exist before I got there. We had to set it up from scratch and sort of learn this art of contingency and humanitarian response in this Pacific island, from this Pacific island location that allowed us a very a wide access to the whole Pacific region, where, as you know, there's a lot of allies and a lot of current events even today that are sort of arising out of the relationships and the activities that happen in these areas. We were very much focused on this idea of responding to humanitarian crises. So we would do things like airfield surveys and deploy to places like Sri Lanka or Bangladesh and do an airfield survey and try to hand them tools so that they could better understand what it is they were equipped to handle in the case of an emergency. And so from there, I went to Okinawa and worked in Japan. And I had a bunch of different jobs in Japan. Japan was a very vibrant place for U.S. forces and for the activities that we engage in with our allies. And the Air Force base there that I was assigned to, I ended up working with some combat search and rescue helicopters. And so I was an intel analyst for helicopter pilots, and we ended up getting tasked to go to Afghanistan shortly after. It was a little while after, actually. This was around 2006, 2007 time period, where we'd already been in Afghanistan, since 2001, and Iraq since shortly after that, about 2002, and so what we were tasked to do, it's not normal for combat search and rescue to go deploy to places like Afghanistan to do medevac operations, but that's what we were tasked to do. because the Army, even at that time, had already been sort of very much overutilized, you know. And so we went out there to assist the Army in doing these combat search and medical evacuation operations, where we were essentially flying beside and supporting the Army in their mission. And so it was in that environment that I really got to learn and experience firsthand, you know, just how close I was to the edge of the network and the ability to understand what's happening around me and report that in a way that would assist pilots and, you know, colonels and other decision makers in how to position their assets and their resources and their personnel. So that was a very interesting experience for me, deploying to Afghanistan, and even deploying to some of the remote tactical operations centers and providing intelligence support to these helicopter pilots embedded in their unit, deployed with them into the field. And the things that we used to communicate these medevacs were very impressed on me in terms of like both their utility and their ability to help us make decisions. And some of the things that I used to accomplish those goals was a combination of a spreadsheet, a mapping system. We had a map that would allow me to make custom maps for pilots. So it was really designed for launching aircrafts and doing flight plans. But I adapted this for a ground scenario use, because you could have essentially any level of imagery in these systems, all the way down to 1 meter imagery, and have very good tactical situation awareness using these mapping systems. And so what I would do is I would create a spreadsheet. And have you ever heard of IRC?
I think I have heard of that, but I don't know what it is.
IRC is a protocol for sending chat, just a chat protocol, internet relay chat, right? And it was one of the really, really useful protocols to come out of the development of the internet and the chat-based protocols. You know, the first chat protocols were open source and available, and so when you and I were growing up and just experiencing the internet really for the first time, those chat channels that we used, and even a lot of the ones since then, were influenced or even based on the IRC protocol itself. You know, Slack is a great example of this, taking IRC and adapting this for the project workspace kind of environment, you know. And so we were using IRC, A, because it's free, and B, because we also had the tools to secure that network, you know. So when I'm in my tactical operations center in Afghanistan, I get a 9-line medevac information report. And so this 9-line medevac comes out of a chat window that I'm watching, and I have, you know, maybe half a dozen to a dozen chat windows that I'm essentially monitoring. And the way that we structure the protocol is that we know who's on assignment to respond to medevacs in a certain region, right? And so those chats are also based on regional regional boundaries that have been identified and shared with all of the people that are involved in these emergency and military applications. So there's medics in the field that are also positioned forward around the country, and it's very low bandwidth kind of conditions. You know, we're not trying to serve up huge amounts of information. It's really just like, get this 9 lines of text to this tactical operations center so this pilot and their crews can launch and recover a individual safely. And so the way that process works is that we get that 9-line. You know, I spin my crews up and I call them either through a radio. The radios that we use are, you know, ham radio and also satellite communications, SATCOM radio, that we have at our disposal. And one of the things that I realized when I was in this situation is that, you know, sort of, you know, this was 2006, you know, almost 15 years ago. And it just sort of dawned on me at that point. It's like, well, what happens when we lose this internet connection that we have that's helping me sort of establish this connection with this frontline medevac, you know? What tools do I really have if that goes down, or if that an outage occurs? And really, like, you know, these other kind of satellite antennas that push these like low bandwidth radio frequencies, so you can actually send messages long distance, are that like sort of last line, you know? And that if I lose my internet, in a lot of ways I lose a lot of the capabilities to connect and track what's happening, and it becomes at that point a very manual process, you know, of writing down 9-line medevac reports and manually looking up a lat long on a map, you know, and very quickly, you know, we're sort of relying on like not these sophisticated tools anymore. We're relying on a lot more rudimentary tools, and I just think it's interesting to talk about this because not a lot of people are really exposed to the process of how information, especially like life-saving information, is communicated, and how much of that relies on both the hardware, software, and the interfaces that sort of allow us to engage that information. But there's also this sort of all this hidden infrastructure, you know, the hardware, lines of communication, and...
What's wrong with just phones?
How do you mean?
I mean, it seems like if I had an emergency situation, I'd get on the phone. I don't need the internet.
Okay.
Y'all didn't have that.
Well, but that phone is still... There's still a hardware line or an antenna that is driving that.
Right. So if I were in the middle of the desert, it might not work.
Well, and also, and we did have STEs, like we call them, they're essentially secure telephones. And we absolutely have that, you know. But when we're talking about data transmission, let's say a 9-line report that I need to like take from this input system and then turn it around and actually create intelligence products out of it, either whether it's a map or whether it's a report, you know, I basically have to be able to transmit this information around, you know. And just to say that the systems that we use just weren't very integrated, you know, and that was sort of a realization for me that that there could be better ways to do this, because I'll just bring back the medevacs for a second. You know, when I was making a spreadsheet of all of these incidents and reports and medevacs that we were taking on, we wanted a way to not only track that and those incidents and those reports for both reporting and to inform, you know, decision making. But also I could give these overlays to the pilot, and they could fly with them with their tough book in the cockpit, you know. And it's a very manual process though, because I was basically taking these spreadsheets and then importing them in and creating these monthly overlays, and it was just a process of using half a dozen different utilities and different softwares to sort of bring this picture together of these are the medevacs that we responded to. These are the issues and the threats that we see in our environment, and this is how we responded, and this is all the reporting that went with that as well. So like all of that is sort of produced over a lot of different software platforms, and
you integrated it.
Yeah, well, I found a way to make it work in a tool set that I could hand to other analysts and professionals, that they could then repeat that process.
And Plan Systems has grown out of that.
Sort of grown out of this idea that we need more integrated systems that take advantage of these new technologies that we have available to help both secure our data, but also to distribute it and make it more redundant and accessible.
Okay.
Yeah.
So go ahead and let's jump in a little bit. Show me what it what's going on with it and what it looks like.
All right. Well, let's get it started, I guess. We're not done with this software. We're really, in a lot of ways, we're still at the beginning. We've been working on this project for about 3 years now. The first year and a half we spent in designing the infrastructure and the underlying foundation of the system, and then we spent the last year to year and a half working on the interfaces. So there really are two very important parts of this project that they will eventually come together in order to create a much more integrated way to connect on the internet.
Okay. Okay, and so that's part of what I want to talk to you about too. I want to see what it is, but I also want to know what it is you're looking for, because I know you're looking to get some backing on this.
Yeah, we would love to get other people involved in what we're doing, and it really is a principled framework that we're working on. So I just launched the application here. All right, yeah, so now we're in the system here, and we're recording the screen. Sorry for those that can't see it right now.
This will be on Rumble and BitChute, and it'll be on YouTube unless it's something YouTube would censor, and then it'll be on BitChute and Rumble.
There's no reason to censor any of this.
You never know what we're going to talk about.
Let's see. So this right here, we've just opened, this is our panel system. So this is a system that was built with a 3D engine. And the only reason that that's important is because it adds essentially a new capability for you to connect in immersive spaces and environments, rather than, what a lot of people are used to when they engage with the internet are web browsers. So in a lot of ways, this is like a web browser. It runs as an application, but a web browser is designed to render 2D layout views of information. Now, our browser is designed to render 3D layout views. So it's not a text-based system, it's a node-based system. So those nodes you can think of them as an abstraction to almost anything, a data set or it's a data set, okay. to be simplistic about it.
Please be simplistic. I am not tech savvy.
Yeah, so what we're looking at here is the 2D panel system, and so this 2D thing can be on a desktop computer or on a mobile device. Okay. I've got my iPad here.
And I said be simplistic for me, but you can go into any detail you want to for people who are more techie, because some people would want more detail.
Yeah, definitely. And so this is designed to be also AR, VR compatible in the future when you want even more integration with the world in terms of the data that you're working with, overlaying on top of the world that we're looking at, those kind of things become possible. But we think that it's really important, if you're going to have tools like this, that they be designed in a way that serves communities and the individuals adopting these tools, and that privacy is a very important part of this project. And that's also in part why we decided to establish this organization as a 501c3, is because we want to position the infrastructure that people use as owned by the communities and the organizations that are using them, not that they're renting their privacy from another third party.
So it's highly accessible.
Right.
And not necessarily, and almost like free energy. It's a gift to the world.
It is a gift, and that's the idea, is that you almost can't give somebody security and be involved in that process, right? Because as soon as let's say I'm insert big tech company here kind of label, And I say, well, I'm going to give you this really encrypted system, but first I'm going to take your credit card and payment information, and then I'm going to ask you for your phone number so you can log into my system. And then I'm going to be keeping track of all the logs and all of the information and possibly selling it to third parties on the back end.
You don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of times you do know that they are.
Right. That's true.
And they'll be clear about like the fact that that is happening.
Okay, so this in a way, like for me to compare it to free energy is a good comparison? Like it's...
Yeah, because, and the way I look at it is like software is a public good. Some of my influence has been in thinking of how to structure these systems has been from a really fine lady named Eleanor Ostrom, who won a Nobel Prize in economics, was the first woman to win the Nobel Prize in economics. She was very informative and sort of groundbreaking in her work, where she would travel to communities across the world in places like Japan and really a lot of different places that her work covers, where she would look at commons, environments, and communities, coming together to manage common resources, and have a common system for how to use and access those resources. And she came up with this really beautiful foundational approach of a framework for governing the commons, and that's her seminal work. It was called Governing the Commons. And so we've taken her framework and tried to adapt it for a technological use case, right?
I will put her name in the show notes. Eleanor Ostrom?
Eleanor Ostrom, yeah. So right now, just because we don't have some of the core, let's see, I'm just going to update a couple things here while we're doing this. And so what we're looking at here is called our Crate Manager. And so what we do is we package up 3D content using the 3D engine that we've created our application with, and then package it into a thing that we call a crate. And that crate can then be put on a server and distributed to the community. So we're about to look at the planned community here. So right now we're downloading the crate that essentially will give us access to all of the 3D content that I've used in this demo community. So right now, when we look at it, it will be a bunch of question mark boxes. And so a little bit about the environment that we're in. This is a 3D environment now. You see that I've got all my question mark boxes there because that's actually crate content that hasn't been loaded in yet.
Okay.
Right? So the way our system works is instead of taking a bunch of HTML, right, and then rendering it on the page using HTTP protocol, what we're doing is we have a node-based system. So this is like each one of these boxes is a node that's on this floor, right? And you don't. So essentially, this is referencing a very simple file that just tells the system here where to place the objects in the scene. And so what this allows us to do is essentially have this immersive 3D environment that, let's pan over here because this content is still in the crate. So here we have some of the first functional channels that are in our system. So we have a links. This one will open up to the Plan Systems homepage. So while we're looking at this, let's just get rid of this. There is a 2D browser built into this system. So it's not just exclusively a 3D environment, it's actually 2D and 3D content being brought together in a system that will allow you to, sometimes you want to look at a map, but sometimes you want to read a report. Sometimes you're reading a report that is based off of locations on a map. Yeah, I just wanted to point out also here that this is a multitasking environment. So these tabs will pin to any side that allows you to get some different perspectives of the environments that you're engaging in here. So the function that we have that we're provisioning for really, so I can essentially click anywhere in a space, and then I can start placing a node, which in this case can be represented by a 3D model, or we call them glyphs. A glyph is just a 2D or a 3D icon that represents something in your environment. And it's meant to be a little vague because it's supposed to be user defined, right? So I put a bunch of content in this system that that people will be able to play with, like map markers and trees and foliage and other environmental components that will help people sort of design their own 3D space and then invite people into the space for different collaborative reasons, such as, let's say you want to have a chat, or you want to do make a spreadsheet with somebody, a collaborative spreadsheet. So the interface right now is pretty limited, and we still are trying to garner partners and sponsors to move this along in development. But what we have right now essentially shows where we're headed in terms of creating these information channels that allow people to organize themselves and come together and create information spaces that will allow them to archive their community, but also to work together in the same space.
You've said neighborhoods, communities, first responders. You had said that. Who else would use this?
So I envision the way that we've set up our nonprofit is to be geared towards science, education, and underprivileged communities. And I really think a big part of being able to show up for underprivileged communities, for example, is to provide tools for economic development as much as just, a messaging system, So this system also incorporates the latest in distributed ledger technology, which would allow you to distribute the information within your network. And then, let's say you lose your device, you leave it at a coffee shop, or it gets stolen out of your backpack for some reason, for example, where you can just get your new device, and plug it into the internet, and it replicates your information right back onto your device without having to know a lot or mess with,
This is no backup act.
Right. It's sort of an auto backing up, auto replicating distributed system,
Okay, so groups of people under any circumstance.
Yeah, groups of people organizing and coming together, very much like the Slack or Zoom model, except for we're not just limiting. We're trying to provision for a very robust open source set of protocols that we can implement that includes voice, conferencing, messaging, and maps, maps and 3D content.
Yeah, I want to see that.
So what I just did there was I opened up a space within a space. So we started out in this Hello Universe, which is a planned community, right? And our planned community is essentially a demo environment to welcome people in and also get them familiarized with some of the concepts that they'll be encountering in this system. And that's a little bit over to the right there where we first started, but we're waiting for the crate content to load until we can see what those things are.
Well, if we're waiting for a second, I have a question for you about surveillance, because one of the things that we talked about in the group that I'm a member of here in Austin, it came up that your phone is taking a picture of you every 5 seconds. Do you know about that?
I have heard of such things.
Okay, so someone showed it. I saw the video of your infrared camera. They managed to take an infrared video of the infrared camera taking a picture every 5 seconds. And so the question is, why? Why would it want a picture of you every 5 seconds? And then someone has come to the conclusion that they're creating a, what'd they call it? A digital twin, yeah, I think it's called a digital twin of every single human being. So they want to know when you were excited about that purchase on Amazon, the facial expressions that you were making that were excited, or the letdown. Like, so that in every scenario that you're in, they know your emotions, they can map out you, basically. So it's a huge invasion of our privacy. And so then there's these little, basically like stickers you can buy that fit perfectly on your phone on top of all the cameras that are there that you're not even aware of, apparently. And you can have them for your computer too, so that it's not, taking pictures of you. And my friend was like, it doesn't matter. Even if you cover up all that stuff and put electrical tape over everything and they can't take a picture of you every 5 seconds, they know where you are on GPS all the time. They have, there's constant surveillance of of our facial recognition everywhere we go. I mean, it's just, privacy is no longer a concept. And nobody signed up for this. Nobody asked me if I was okay with that. Nobody asked me if I was okay for a lot of the things that are going on right now. What are your thoughts about all that?
Did.
Just totally off topic. What are your thoughts about surveillance and privacy, and then how can we make that better?
I guess in a way they did ask your permission, and you just didn't read the consent box. You clicked I agree.
I didn't, but when I walk down the street and all those cameras are surveilling me, did I agree to that? When I elected my officials that agreed to have that? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a very complex situation. It's like at what point are these things helping or hindering our communications environment, and what are the implications, the long-term implications of multi-generational information being stockpiled by corporations that really are designed to be self-interested in a lot of ways, and so are sort of incentivized and geared to want to get as much information as they possibly can. And we're sort of in this environment where it has become difficult to understand really to what degree this stuff is occurring, because a lot of it is so much out of sight. And of course then the problem sort of the privacy considerations expand the more of a bird's eye view that you get into the rest of the world and the intelligence capabilities of other countries and such. And I think that's deserves to be a part of the conversation, is like, not only how are we securing ourselves from bad actors, but on a worldwide and global level, we know that we have adversaries out there, and what is really prudent, and what are the pragmatic things to do in terms of discussion around security and privacy. When I was in the Air Force, we did talk about these things. We had conversations about Facebook and the implications of putting personal and private information on platforms like that. But you don't see those kind of conversations happening on the nightly news, and you don't see them happening in the publications that claim to have our best interests in mind. And that's unfortunate, because there's been plenty of opportunities for discovery around these very vital issues of national security. I mean, what we really are talking about is a sort of a collective national security problem that nobody, well, not nobody, but a vast majority of people aren't equipped to understand or to take part in that discussion. And in part, a new infrastructure that is designed for humanity and communities really has to take some of these things into consideration. Is like, what are the fundamental things that you need to be a part of your system in order for some of these, some of these concerns to be addressed. So I'll just open up our, I'm gonna go to our website real quick. So this is a little bit about Drew. He was a nuclear submarine officer, also a student of Cornell in computer science. He invented the audio reactive visualizer that appeared early in iTunes in 2001. When iTunes was first getting going, they saw Drew's work and they were like, we got to have this in our commercials and in our iTunes player. He's designed his own 3D engine, went on to specialize in real-time 3D technology and user experience architecture, and also the architecture that we're building for Plan, the distributed architecture. And so, we sort of paired our experience, working both in intelligence systems and in the, in the Navy and in distributed systems technology. And we tried to identify the core components and the framework, the structural framework that we would need in order to have a system that would serve people in all over the world in their endeavors, both in, conducting the process of science, because it is a process, and a lot of data is involved in that process, and a lot of our understanding and how we act and interact with each other in the daily world are based on these scientific processes. And so I really feel strongly that we need robust systems in order to support those decisions and the things that are coming out of that. And we also need protocols to be able to share that information and understand it in visual, intuitive ways that help that information process happen. And we've also had some contributors, and like Tim here is a serial software or a serial startup software engineer, and he's been a great development advisor for us, and has been helping work on our peer-to-peer infrastructure. And Jeff here is the organization development director. He helped me set up the nonprofit and is on our board. And so we've had a lot of help along the way in setting this stuff up. But the thing that I really wanted to share was this design software principles.
And so where you are right now is on the website. People could go to this. They could go to plan-systems.org.
That's right.
Okay.
Plan-systems.org, and then it's linked in the headers. You can find that there. And so right now we're looking at the software design principles, and it's a set of very important framework principles that we are making decisions based off of in order to, really create a new kind of approach for software that includes this sort of these values that underlie the system. One of them is total data ownership. Another one is total data privacy and real-world security provisioning. We talked a little bit about that stuff. We also talked about hardware agnostic and open source flexibility. Some of the others include being modular and pluggable. So, the way that our system looks like today, just because it looks like that on our computer, doesn't mean that that's what it will look like in your community. And maybe you have a community of designers and people that want to add their own twist on how the panel is set up, or how the interface is experienced, or the things that the content that you find inside the system.
So people can tweak it.
Yeah. So it's open source to be able to be tweaked and expanded, and another piece of this that I think is really important is the usability and accessibility part of this. And in large part, what I'm referring to is like people with limited mobility, people that actually have to consider the logistics of their trip every time they leave the house, you know, or people that have deteriorating vision or mobility capabilities, you know. So I'm really in this to try to create universally accessible systems. You know, if we can solve for spatial navigation for the blind, you know, I mean, that alone, that project alone can give all of our the elderly people in our lives, you know, and so many with mobility challenges, the ability to actually get out in the environment, or hand somebody a tool that will give them the security permissions that they need to, let's say, you know, help them with their systems, you know, without compromising their fundamental security. And I think that that's a really important part of this. And what helps make that possible is by intentionally designing a system to be open source, intentionally designing it so that it can be extended, intentionally designing it so that you can hand over the software to somebody else without them having to go through a corporate license agreement, you know, because that's where the privacy starts in that relationship between those two people. My friend Gordon Fuller went blind over his lifetime, and he's an advisor for us, and he's a really great spokesman for what we're doing, and really helps get the word out, because he sees the huge potential for a collaborative and spatial system in helping him better navigate his environment. You know, and that's not to say that he needs a 3D browser, but he does need the information that a 3D browser can help essentially package for him. And then he needs a special interface that will allow him to get that information, not in the way where he's navigating this 3D scene, but where he's getting it through ways that he accepts input.
I'm so confused by that. This is such a visual thing.
Right. Well, but you could still distill directions, for example, down to an audio or a vibrational input. So like when this vibrates twice, take a right. When it vibrates 3 times, take a left. When it
Almost
vibrates,
like a self-driving car.
Exactly. In a lot of ways, like a blind person, almost like the technology riding the human like a horse, but then giving them the information to make the decision. So instead of the horse making the decision, it's the still the human is in control and navigating that scene, but the technology is assisting by providing external vision and a way to communicate that spatial data in a way that blind individual could understand.
That's amazing.
So that would really, to me, you know, if we can get that accomplished, there's so many beautiful things that come with that. Just by making that one target use case, you know, highly refined and honed to in these systems that we're talking about. And that would extend to all of our family members, all of our associates, you know, and all of the places that kind of information needs to show up in the logistics processes that we encounter, in the tracking of information. But of course, you know, any system like that also you want to be provisioned. You want a lot of intention and provisioning into the security aspects of that infrastructure, and you know, so that's our challenge.
You're a visionary. You're creating something and even envisioning something, conceiving of things that are mind-blowing. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. So let's see how we did. Looks like our update took, and so now when we open up our system, we should get a little bit of a different reception. Well, now we got a cat.
This little creature.
We're making progress. Let's see what else we got.
You showed a map. It looked like a video game when I saw your
Yeah,
presentation.
we're gonna get it. Essentially, this is like a little welcome document that you can use to either download across the different platforms that you might have.
Okay.
We have this on a MacBook Air right now. I hear the fans humming. And it just gives you some tips on what you can do in the environment right now as it stands.
So it's usable, but it's not finished. It's
correct. Yeah. It's in pieces right now, but this is the interface, and so it kind of is it's our prototype that lets people envision the kind of tools that we're bringing together and the kind of capabilities that will result from that. And so let's see, and then these are the controls here. So place a node, drag the surface around. You can rotate or pan around the environment.
You know who's going to love this is my 11-year-old. He is so into VR.
Right. Yeah, great for visualizing that kind of stuff. And once we have a more robust way to add content, it really, there's just so much creativity and design happening right now that the tools for these things have never been better. You know, we really are at this sort of like this beginning point for 3D technology and the way that technology can support communities. This little guy right here is a placeholder for the accessibility features that we expect to add. Right now, it is a zoom button so that you can adjust your screen size. So it's a pretty important feature because this is an interface that works across all desktop and mobile devices. So if you wanted to have this on a screen with multiple screens supporting your visualization environment, let's say you're a first responder at a command post, and you want to have one screen dedicated to chats, one dedicated to maps, and one over here dedicated to keeping track. Let's say a spreadsheet or something is open, so that those kind of utilities and multitasking capabilities are available for decision makers that are trying to understand and sift through content and information. Right now, the real strength of the system is in bringing together and displaying 3D content. And there's a few other platforms that do that, but not really quite anything like what we're doing so far as I can tell.
Yeah, what's your competition like? Anybody else doing this? You wouldn't know, would you?
I mean, there are various projects out there, but there's very few that are taking a whole systems approach. I mean, so in terms of like infrastructure plus interfaces together, you know, there's a lot of projects that are smartly working on, you know, niches that are a little bit more dialed into a particular segment or use case, you know. But we really think that it's very important to consider. You need a robust infrastructure and the ability to get the data around on the current internet infrastructure that exists, right? But you also need to be able to interact with that information. You need an interface, something that that you can actually use. You know, computers, when they first showed up when we were kids, you know, like we would, I mean, I don't know about you, but I would run like the DOS program and stuff and just be sort of perplexed at how was I supposed to interface with this thing I had to learn all these commands, and I had to learn, what those commands did and how they operated and how they functioned.
It was kind of daunting.
It was kind of daunting. It's like, and there weren't any websites to go to. It was just sort of like, okay, you ran these programs, and a lot of people got what they would get out of the computers when they run a game and play a game, and so. One of the objectives is to really simplify the whole IT process, into something where a website becomes as simple to launch as clicking in a space, adding a space channel, opening it, and then starting to put stuff into it, and so for example, we'll just add a quick designer space here of Stonehenge. And so now we're at the Stonehenge site. Somebody took the time to do a LiDAR scan of Stonehenge, and now I can have it as my desktop background or my desktop immersive space, And I can click anywhere on this Stonehenge model, and I can add other channels. Let's say a talk channel or a sheets channel. These are the primary ones in our system that are up and functioning. So if I add a talk channel right here, that becomes a glyph of this channel that we've made, and then we can open the channel and we can say hi to whoever is in this space with us. Right, and the reason this is as easy as launching a website is because each one of these channels that is created has a channel address. Now this channel address has to be read by a planned browser, but what this fundamentally lets you do is share this channel address with somebody and meet them in this space and begin to collaborate with them. And as the tools progress, getting the content in here will become easier and easier, and the cost to run these systems tends to scale towards near zero, because we're in an open source environment where people can package their own content, and just like they're sharing a link on the web, share that with somebody else and come into a space together. And so that's the vision for how easy it should be really to create an environment for somebody to come and experience together. One of the things that I've put in here is so we've got a fire medical safety crate, right? And inside this crate, if we were to go and grab this, is a bunch of different models that you could build a first responder's emergency scene with. Firefighter, an ambulance, a fire truck, and each one of these models, you can add functionality to them to create that interaction that you're going for in your project. So that'll take a minute to finish. And you see I've got a lot of other crates here. These are my maps crates. So I've got a map of Austin in here. Mm-hmm. I've got a San Francisco map in here. Some other essentially demo and example terrains. That
I'd love for you to show that Austin map.
For sure, yeah. Let's get that next.
To go to Stonehenge.
Right. Okay. The models and glyphs, or the safety, fire medical safety crate finished up, and now we'll come over here to get the Texas maps. Okay, now when we exit this and we go back to our home space, now all of our content is in there. So when I zoom in, you see my scene that I made for you. Okay. So this is a little cat chat that we have. Click on this guy, open this up, and here's some people have been leaving messages in here for us. And then each one of these is a different channel or a link that I've left in here. Some of them go to other, so like this is a space channel. A space channel is a 3D container for navigating and placing nodes, web links, and other channels. Use the altitude slider on the right side of the screen to zoom in and out, and change the perspective by using multi-touch on mobile or by holding shift and the left mouse button to kind of zoom around. So this is how you navigate in this new internet space. And then you can also use these buttons here to sort of create like to zoom around the environment and such.
Just your keyboard.
Yeah, just your keyboard. A lot of gamers will already be familiar with the layout. So yeah, so you have some different camera options there, and let's open this space here. So that opened me up to a world map where I've also left some instructions about placing terrain here. And then that Stonehenge environment that we made is here. I've already made it in this map here. And then, oops, just reopen that. Oh, how are we doing on our Austin map? We got it. All right. So if I want to make a new Austin space, a space with the map of Austin in it, I've already got my content loaded in here. So all I have to do is come over to where I want it on the map, and then I think Austin's right about there, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, that's Austin.
And then I come over here and I'm going to add a space channel. And a space channel is a container for other channels, links, and information that you place in them. And I don't like this glyph that it has by default, so I'm actually going to set this as a custom glyph. So I'm going to go into my models and glyphs, and I'm going to put a map marker on here. So let me just put just a normal map marker. And so this is still my space channel. I can click on it and actually anything in the scene can be like rotated or resized, or so let's say I want to make this a little smaller. So I can make that smaller. I can rotate it around.
I feel like I should be doing this. Like I should be like videotaping you. Yeah, doing that.
Okay. And so now we're in here, and I'm gonna click on this guy and open that channel, and now it's an empty space, and we're gonna place our Austin terrain right here in the center of the space. So I'm gonna go to place a node. I'm gonna come to my Texas maps and my Austin 30 kilometer by 30 kilometer city sized 3D map, and it's a little big, so it's going to take a second to pop in here. But the thing that's cool is like the content itself, like me loading this into this environment for you, it's no longer, we're not going over the internet anymore. You've already preloaded that content. So I can place this map over and over again in as many spaces as I want and use it for dozens of different applications, you know, now that I have that content. So here it just popped in, and now we have our 3D Austin map that we're able to use as our backdrop to our space channel.
Now, do you have this for all over the world, or just a few places right
Man,
now?
if we could like get the sponsors and the partners together, and that is definitely something that to have a geospatial reference material for the entire globe would be amazing gift for people to be able to enjoy and experience in whether it's a project that they're doing, or whether let's say maybe one of the cool ideas I had that I think that would be really fun to implement would be a news aggregation site that places articles via links onto a 3D map that now you can access by clicking on the link and then opening it in another tab, and you would still have your map there. But it would be just a wonderful way to be able to distribute information about things happening in your city or in your town, or maybe even just sharing amongst friends of where you want to meet up. And so that's why I've taken a lot of time to really put in maps and environments that will help really give people the picture that this is being designed to incorporate the logistics processes that help us survive together on this planet, you know.
Okay, so explain more of that. How does that do that? How does it do it?
Well, right now it is, you know, still early in development. So, but the idea is like, you know, I can use this map to, let's say, add a link here. What's your website?
freedomjunkieradio.com, but it's not live yet. You have to use a different one.
Okay, which one should we use?
Just a website? Like,
well, we're just dropping a link here.
Okay, how about Viva, Vivala Silk, vivalasilk.com.
All right, so we just made a web link for Viva La Silk, and so when we open that, that will open up the Viva La Silk webpage, and so we can dock it over here. And we just sort of picked a location, not for any real reason, right? There's different reasons why you might want to have either an abstract space with no backing in it, or an actual terrain that lets you work with spatial information.
Okay, so you would have dropped that where they were located or something.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. But in the future, when there are more integrations available, you could imagine a map like this integrating with, you know, a bus route system, or, you know, maybe a route planning, you know, or you know, route planning, especially given, you know, the mobility. Mobility limitations some people experience, where, you know, they're going to need to map their routes and exactly how long it's going to take, and that's going to be dependent on the equipment they have and how long their batteries are going to last. And so maybe they need to make a special route and then share that with a friend or a group of people that they're, you know.
Okay. It also seems like you'd want to be able to share this with everyone, kind of like the internet. Like if you had all the businesses mapped out and you had all the, you know, the information about those places, the websites, the information that people who have certain challenges would want to know about certain places. I mean, like you could have your closed community where you're using this application, but also it seems like you'd want it to be very comprehensive.
Right, and I think what you're identifying is the sort of the benefits of a global place to meet. You know, like a website. I'm not sure how much time you've considered it, but or how much time you've taken to consider it. But most websites are read-only, and the reason that they're read-only is because there's a lot of security concerns around making something that's globally accessible, something that also the entire globe can interact with. Like that is kind of
like Wikipedia. Everyone can interact with Wikipedia, right?
But can they?
Oh, I mean, I never have. I don't know. That's what I thought. I thought you could go in and change Wikipedia. And that does make major security issues.
You can, but there is a process by which the Wikipedia organization establishes the protocol of how to update a page, and by the kind of things that they want you to take into consideration and also be respectful of when you are making those changes.
So there's gatekeepers.
So they've and that's not a bad thing.
Right.
Like you definitely want that, and that's why we're designing this a lot more geared towards a community enclave, a local.
Okay, you put in the information you want in there.
Right, okay. And that's not to say that this couldn't be global. Like you could definitely just like lock down a space and make it read only so that you can present and share information with people.
Because then it would just be a big mess if everyone
Right,
could go
but
and
you
put
wouldn't
anything
want to
anywhere.
just invite the entire world into your community because, well, you're hosting this community and it's your resources, it's your bandwidth, and it's your storage, And so we'll have utilities that help communities and individuals manage and moderate their spaces, And so that way, if you want to have a distributed organization, for example, where there is no central server, everybody is just sort of pitching in the bandwidth and storage that the network needs in order to get their mission accomplished.
Like your own cloud, your own.
Exactly, your own personal or community swarm.
Okay.
We call it swarm
Okay.
because the cloud is sort of already taken.
Right. No, swarm works. Okay, and the cloud is computers. It's not.
Well, we're all of this that we're talking about is just computers.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just that we're making it as easy as Linux did to launch a 3D server. Or a server, not a 3D server. It's a server that will allow you to interact in this new environment.
Okay, so did you want to show us a few more features and then talk about what it is y'all are going to do and what you need?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the things that would be cool to share would be, let's see. You said you hadn't been to the warehouse. Okay. So the warehouse is my friend Randy's warehouse. It's in Austin. So let's see if we can find that real quick. So here's 35. As you can see, it would be really handy to have search connected to this, but it's still early. So we're just going to do...
Okay, so one day you'll have a search bar.
Yeah.
Viva La Silk is my friend, my Cherie's business. She does hand-painted silk scarves and kimonos, and she's out of Austin.
Beautiful. Yeah, like one of the first things everybody does is like, where's my house?
Where's my house? And so I guess as this would update, kind of like Google Maps updates, would it use that technology? Did you take this off of Google Maps?
This is from a designer who used open source utilities and programs and information to construct a 3D model of the city of Austin. And so so this is not relying on any external data feeds or sources or anything. It really is just a model of Austin that that you could overlay other layers of information, and so would love to have a more like robust and complete mapping system in here, but this is really drives home the point that like even with standalone 3D content, you can actually do a lot of very powerful things in the environment. And so let's just say this is my friend's warehouse, just for the example purposes. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I've done a 3D LiDAR scan of their warehouse, and we're going to place that 3D LiDAR scan in this map.
What is a 3D LiDAR scan?
LiDAR is laser imaging detection and range finding. So it's basically just using lasers to calculate how the distance of objects in the environment.
So you basically walked through the space.
So I walked through the space
a fancy camera.
With a fancy camera, really just an iPad, and capturing that space methodically, and then converting that into essentially it makes a point cloud. That's what they call it, and it's essentially a dot matrix representation of that space. And then you take a technology called photogrammetry to process the images that get overlaid over that that dot matrix.
It's like a 3D image of your space.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Great.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
so that's what we're going to look at. So we just made a space channel here so that we can open a new channel. Go to place my node. I'm going to come into my plan systems material crate, and here's my LiDAR scan. So that's going to pop up, and it's really tiny, so I'm going to make it bigger. And so this is one of the things you might want to do with a spatial collaboration tool is map out an environment, or
Oh, that's cool.
so here we
So that's
are.
how the space looks inside.
Yeah, this is the inside of this notional warehouse that we're in.
A warehouse.
Right, and so this is their stage. This over here are some paintings that are up on the wall. These are for sale. And maybe I want to make some nodes on the wall that represent people being able to like purchase these paintings, for example. I could just add let's add a channel, and we'll make it a Sheets channel, and then we'll just turn it into
Sheets meaning like a piece of paper.
Sheets, meaning like a spreadsheet.
Oh, okay.
And then we'll just make it a blue light. Do the same thing with these.
Yeah, I think of taking notes. You think of spreadsheets. So it works.
Right, the same thing, really. And then one more. Particle nodes. All right, so I've got my nodes. Each one of them is going to be for the different painting that we want to, and then maybe we're doing a silent auction, for example. So you would just hand somebody a link to this space. They would see all of you would say, everything that's for an auction is going to have a blue atom next to it. Just click on that atom and start the bidding process.
Okay, so everyone who's using this is going to have to know how to use it.
Well, you might give a quick tutorial in the beginning just to run through.
But you think it's straightforward enough to where...
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because right now I would still be like, oh...
Well, keep in mind that this stuff would be set up for you before you got there, right? And so you would be connecting into a community that was already ready to accept you. Okay. And we started this from scratch, and now we've just been building stuff from scratch here, right? But now as you build up your space or the environment that you're creating, somebody comes into that for the first time, yeah, maybe they do need a little instructional on how to work within your space, but after that, once they get the basic controls down, and you can just be navigating in the environment and, having people click around. There's really it's not an incredibly complex program, it's not like Salesforce where you're like setting up all these like menus within menus, it's we try to be as simple and straightforward with it as possible. Of course, it is, it's still a system, right? So all systems have like a way that you approach it and learn it, and there's going to be a learning. I don't think you can take the learning process out, but we can like mitigate it, and actually the interfaces can be what's great about our system is that we could dial down the interface to be something as simple as just a text and button, what maybe the space channel doesn't apply to certain people at all. We can craft a custom channel adapter that is adapted to either view or display or communicate that information in a totally different way. So instead of showing up in this spreadsheet or in this geospatial environment, for instance, and looking at all of these as like individual locations on a map, maybe you're looking at them in a spreadsheet view in a way that is presented in a data view, where you can actually edit that data, but that importantly it shows up at the same time for everybody when you're done editing it. So you can really get that collaborative experience in the same way that a lot of what we're used to with applications, except for the the goal that we're going for is that even when there isn't the internet connection supporting that robust conversation, that your tools don't stop being useful at the local level. So you can still connect to somebody that's in the other room, for example, between a Mac and an Android, and talk to each other. There's no gatekeeper saying, sorry, we don't accept the Android communications protocol, or it essentially creates a way for you to be on a lot of different devices and still using the same interface and the same tools.
Okay. Well, do you want to show us a few more things, or do you want to talk about what it is y'all are looking to do?
Let's see. Did you have any more questions about these spaces? Do you think we looked at enough?
I liked how you showed, when you did your presentation, how first responders could use it as a community, and they you dropped a little fire on something that was on fire.
So let's walk through that scenario real quick. So we've got our warehouse here, and I'll just get rid of that guy. And let's say we had a warehouse fire. So I'll just add a fire effect to this building here, and
all 9,000 people that are part of this, what do you call it? The community that's involved with this particular. What is the language you have around that? Like, if you're the first responders, what do you call the group of people that's got an interface together on the app?
a community.
The community?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, essentially the unit of organization for our software is a community.
Okay, so the community
So
that
right
has
now
access to
we're
it.
in a community. I could get on my iPad here, and you could be on here.
And everything that you put, since we're connected.
And actually, we can do that if you want. So I'll just open up mine here. So.
Ooh, it's on fire.
So I'm going to navigate to that same Austin map that you're in.
Okay.
And I'm going to start adding a few
things.
Ooh,
I'm at 7%. We got to hurry.
Okay.
I can't get a long enough cord.
All right, let me just navigate over there real quick. All right, so I just have to find you now. I'm in the Austin map. But it should be easy because there's a fire going. So I see it over here. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now...
Oh my gosh, there it is.
Here it is. And maybe I'm the operator and you're the responder. So I'm looking at this sort of operations perspective. I'm getting information on other units that are en route, and you're there on scene, maybe assisting the on-scene commander. And it's your job to sort of help provide the visual perspective of the ongoing operation and communicate with the operator, who's also back at the headquarters looking at the same picture and communicating with you. So.
Okay, so I ran out of juice.
Okay, no worries.
So electricity is important.
Actually, I brought a battery.
I mean, it's okay, because we should probably just talk about what it is you want to do then.
For sure. Yeah, so here we are in the environment. And yeah, so if I'm a first responder and I'm responding to this, I've already got two key pieces of information, right? Two parts of this building are on fire. Now I can make an assessment on where to start setting up and where to start engaging based on what I know about the scene that I'm about to start encountering. It would be also really great if your first responder on the ground here at the building had a real-time communications device like a phone, they can hold up their camera and actually give the operator an on-scene view of exactly what's going on. Now we're talking about a real-time collaborative operation that is able to be undertaken, you know, with the devices that we already have with us.
And you didn't have anything like this in Afghanistan.
Nothing like, well, I had a mapping program called Falcon View. Now, I didn't have 3D maps, and in a lot of cases, you don't really even need a 3D map. 3D can be super helpful, but it's not necessary all the time, right?
It's kind of fun.
But it's great to have and to be able to extend into, especially as we start to talk about these more complex logistics tasks. Like, let's say putting in, let's say you're trying to understand your own network, you know, and you're placing the nodes in the environment as they correspond to where you would find them on your property, for example. Where's the internet service provider point? So if they needed to service it, that they would know where to go on your property to find, or that you would know where to go on your property to find it. You would already know, but maybe other people that you're collaborating with or that are staying there, like you can actually imagine having an immersive system that supports. I have solar on my house, so I got to see the whole setup operation and help install it and everything. But wow, wouldn't it be cool if like you could just have an AR overlay telling you where exactly to run the pipes and where exactly to install the junction box and where exactly to and how to put the solar panels on your roof shingles correctly. And a lot of these things are visual, and they become obvious when you can see them presented in a visual way. And with a lot of the way that technology is currently consumed and the way that information is currently consumed, some of those views are not as easy to access, right? So a spatial environment or a technology that includes spatial utilities can extend into those practical use case applications.
Yeah, I see that. Businesses could use this in-house.
Right. Okay. So like, especially in an age where a lot of people are getting used to remote working,
right?
You know, and
you need to be able to see the space
and
in a way.
you need to be able to, you know, not everything that we rely on can be remote, you know, but sometimes you still need to dial in and engage something in a very quick way and make a decision really quick that people are counting on.
Okay, so tell us what your plans for the near future are and what it is you need.
Yeah, because it's been a real a process and a trial to figure out what is the right way to engage on this, because a lot of people are used to the traditional business model, which in this day and age is a lot of businesses are becoming very reliant on the approach of using people's data in order to leverage additional value so they could give away free products, right? Well, we also want this to be free. Free as in freedom, though. Not to say that you won't pay for some aspect of it or that things won't cost anything, right? But that you need to be able to hand it freely to your neighbor or to your family member or to your, you know, the person that is working with you in your business.
Your business model is different. You're not looking for investors that are going to be like the bottom. There's no bottom line.
Right.
There's no trying to make the most for your investors. This is a gift, and you need investors in a way. Explain what you need.
And we need people that see the value of having a common infrastructure between us that we can use to launch new economies. Our new economies can't exist off of the current infrastructure because the current infrastructure doesn't have these fundamental properties of privacy and data ownership. They don't have these spatial capabilities. And a lot of times they're cobbled together in a patchwork of technologies that have a lot of dependencies and a lot of ways to fail in the time that you need them most. And so we really need, in the same way that Mr. Rogers knew that public education was important enough to be community funded and to remove the interests of the corporate investors and the a lot of times the agenda that comes with that. Not that it's bad; it's just focused on providing a business or service. Now, we will provide businesses and services as a nonprofit. We can absolutely take contracts and provide. One of our big areas of traction will be to set up custom communities and to develop custom content for communities to implement at their organizational level. So that'll be a big part of how we take on clients and provide our services. But then we want to turn around and be able to hand, let's say, the same system and tools and utilities, that fundamental infrastructure, to somebody like the Internet Archive, who are very much a nonprofit focused on archiving the world's knowledge in digital systems.
Okay, you mentioned a number. You need $1.5 million to finish your project.
We think I wouldn't say that would finish the project. I would say that would get us to the point where we could launch and confidently plan our operations for the next year, to be in a position to roll these tools out and to not have that traditional business model sort of following along.
Okay, so what does that look like? You could have some benevolent benefactor come up with 1.5 million, but what if you had 150,000 people give you $10?
That would be perfect for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And that's part of the challenge right now, is to develop a communication strategy for reaching out to the sponsors and partners that see the value in the kind of technology that we want to foster and that want to support and see that technology show up for them. And that can be, anything from a simple donation.
Have you thought of crowdfunding?
I have, definitely. And the way that I'm approaching that, and the way that we've taught, my team and I have discussed approaching it, we don't want to take that on until we know that we have enough of a network in place to actually meet our objective. And
How will you know you've got that?
It's hard to say.
So a network of people?
It is, yeah. Of enough organizations that we're working with, and I could launch a Patreon or some other crowdfund tomorrow, right? But then there actually has to be the messaging and the content and the marketing and the rewards, and we do have a lot of this, right? And it's set up and it's basically ready to go, and ready to deploy. But then I also need to be confident that message will be carried forward by enough allies.
Okay, if you could have everything you need 1 week from today, what would it be?
In terms of?
To make this happen, to make this just move forward. If you could have 100 people, 1,000 people, businesses and entities that are interested in using your product, what is it you need?
So what we're trying to do right now is bring together a team of distributed systems experts, peer-to-peer systems experts, and also 3D user interface and user experience designers, so that we can actually bring together the different components that I've talked about, the infrastructure systems and the interfaces together. And our assessment is that would take around a year to 2 years of intensive development. But it would be these experts that I need to attract on, or we have, a solid team ready to take on these challenges, but I also need to be able to have enough resources to make sure that their livelihoods and well-beings as individuals dedicated to this very, it is an intensely technological feat to bring these things together. So
People gotta get paid.
we want top talent undertaking these critical problems. I mean, we're talking about mission critical infrastructure. So to be realistic, $1.5 million is a starting point. It's a starting point that begins to add onto itself, though, because every tool that we fold into the system, every job that we do where a sponsor says, I would really like this feature, and this thing actually would let me be 10x more productive if I just had this one thing, and I'm willing to sponsor this feature and give it to this nonprofit, for example, that also needs it, and to set up this a funding agreement and relationship where, based on milestones that we decide on and a quid pro quo agreement on what shows up, and then we can incorporate those things. And the more of those that we do, the more that value that we add to this platform and the capabilities that we're able to provide.
Okay.
So where we're at in our current position is we've got this pre-alpha prototype that runs these spaces and these channels that we've been looking at today. But you could see it was a really bare bones interface. It's not a robust chat. It's just basic text. It's not a robust spreadsheet. It's really just a table right now. But we've developed this foundational framework, and the technology has come to the point where we're ready to take on a larger team, and we're ready to take on that budget that we need in order to bring these to a production ready status.
So you need funding and manpower or woman power.
That's right. Yeah, we need contributors in the form of either sponsorships, partnerships, or we can do that through taking on clients as well.
What did you want to do with the music?
Well, you're a music person, right?
Yeah.
You like music stuff?
I love music.
All right.
It's my music on my channel.
Let's just do a music demo.
Okay.
I love music too, and part of the excitement of peer-to-peer and distributed systems for me is the music applications, right? To have a collaborative jam session or a collaborative experience with other people in an artistic environment. So this demonstration or this music that I'm going to play doesn't really have anything to do with plan right now at this point, but actually, this is actually super relevant to you. You're doing a podcast. Guess what? We've made a podcast player. So one day we'll have a podcast, full multimedia capabilities embedded in Plan. So let me show you Tuner. Tuner is our multi-stream audio visual player. So what you're seeing right now is the different platforms that we've integrated into this video, or into this into this audio player. And so whether it's my library that's on my device here, or the 3,000 podcast library that we've put together.
Okay, and this is in the system that is on there right now. This is in Plan Systems.
No, this is separate.
Oh, okay.
So this is our previous work. My collaborator Drew O'Meara has a company called Sound Spectrum, And this is actually the first project that we worked on together, was to take the visuals that he's created and to put them into this visual audio reactive media player.
Okay.
Hopefully this will load for me. And now, yeah, here we go. Subscribe. So that'll show up in my subscription list. And now we're listening to your podcast here in Tuner. And now you've also got this visual sort of entertainment background to listen to your...
That's amazing.
Right. So here's the podcast. Looks like you've got about a dozen or so far.
Yeah, that's about right.
And then we can come and get info on each of your... This is all stuff that you've put in there.
And this is another thing you guys are doing.
Yeah, this is another thing that we've done previously, some of our previous work. And as you can imagine, we would love to have, our entire net radio and podcast library represented in Plan, and bring some of these amazing visuals into the Plan 3D environment. In Plan, a skybox is what is around your space channel. So something like this, or a video, actually, or a... images, 360 images can just be placed around these containers in your environment. So we have a lot of really exciting stuff in the works. When the right combination of sponsors and partners and collaborators comes into the picture with us. So
okay. So what's the music thing you're gonna do?
Yeah, I guess I was just going to play some music, really. So this is my device. Then when you select any of the instruments here, this turns into a keyboard pad.
That's amazing. So you created the loops with Logic?
No, with this. Everything is done on this. Yeah, this whole is a music production system, all in one little...
And what's it called?
OPZ.
OPZ. Is that something new, or has it been around for a while?
It's pretty new. About a couple of years old.
So you don't have to know how to use Ableton. You can just come play.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much for joining us on Freedom Junkie Radio. Please share and tell your friends. And the website should be live soon, which means that you'd be able to get a Freedom Junkie Radio t-shirt, show your support. We're looking for sponsors. And just thanks for being one of the freedom people who wants freedom in this world. Thank you, Freedom Junkies. We'll see you next time.